The transmission mount does exactly what its name implies. It's a rubber isolator that holds the transmission above the crossmember. On your models with the AX15, NV3550, and AW4, and maybe some 4-cylinder ones I don't know about, it's this trapezoid-shaped thing at the back of the transmission. The transmission mount may also be referred to as a rear engine mount, because where the two mounts in the front hold the engine in place and keep it from rotating, the transmission mount keeps the engine and transmission supported on the lateral axis. These can pretty much only fail in one way, where over time the rubber degrades and eventually breaks, resulting in unusual vibrations, snapping or banging noises from an unsecured driveline, or in the worst cases, the transmission falling out. The transmission mount also changed in the XJ's run. Your 87 through 99 models are going to have studs offset to the left side, and your 2000 plus models will have centered studs. You need to be careful to get the correct one. If you have a 2000 plus, keep an eye out for a transmission mount that has this seemingly random hole in it. This is for an alignment peg to make sure you put it in the correct way. If you get one without this hole, you'll have to drill one yourself. You should preemptively consider 4 new nuts for the mount, M8 by 1.25 thread flange nuts if it doesn't include new ones with it. I also bought 2 new bolts for the cross member because I broke one off and plan to replace both of them. It's also a good idea to at least inspect the engine mounts at the same time. Mine are definitely worn out and I'll have to replace those soon, but in this video we'll just worry about the transmission side.
You can see these motor mounts are starting to form a little bit of dry rot on them. They're still very usable, but they definitely could use replacement.
So, set the parking brake and chock the wheels. Cart a jack under the transfer case and just touch it. Don't lift it, just support its weight. A 13 deep socket will reach into these holes where you can remove the 4 nuts. And don't be scared to just break these off if you bought new ones because the studs will also be replaced. Now, the crossmember bolts are notorious for breaking off. As you may have seen many a times now, they require patience. You have to absolutely douse them with PB, or you can use a torch, but using my rusty bolt tactics, I've been able to get them out pretty reliably without heat. You might naively be thinking, wait a minute, this is a bolt. I've removed 1,000 bolts before, how hard could it be? Well, that's what I said, and then I broke one. The tricky part is to initially break them free. You can mimic an impact gun by tapping on the ratchet with moderate force, and when it does crack free, don't get carried away. The threads are caked with rust, and we need to work around that. So spray some more PB up there now that it's no longer seized entirely, and then tighten the bolt back up. Now, working back and forth, very slowly loosen the bolt until it stops, tighten it back up until it stops, and repeat that back and forth process until we have one full rotation out of the bolt. Once it gets going, you'll feel a relatively consistent resistance, and again, with plenty of PB in there, I think anyone can get these bolts out anywhere you live. The nuts on either side never put up much of a fight, and with them removed, the crossmember gracefully falls out. Try not to drop it. Weighs what, maybe 5 pounds, I don't know. It's not that heavy, it's just in a weird spot when you're laying down. The crossmember is importantly directional, so try to keep it oriented the same way it was as you removed it. Now, I know on the 2000 plus models they have a random hole on the edge here, which faces towards the passenger front of the vehicle, but I'm not so certain this hole is on the older ones. The transmission mount is held to the automatic by 2 bolts, and to the manuals by 2 nuts instead. They're all 18mm, and with some sort of extension and perhaps a breaker bar, the mount can simply be removed. With everything out, I try to use an extractor to remove the remains of the crossmember bolt by first drilling it out, and then hammering the extractor into place. That sucker was so stuck in there, I actually stripped out an extractor. I'll have to worry about it later. So let's just pretend that didn't happen and throw in our new transmission mount. These bolts are torqued to 55 foot-pounds, and it's not a bad idea to put a little thread locker on them. Make sure either your studs are off to the left side or your alignment hole is notched into place, and then go ahead and raise the crossmember back in. You might have to lift up the transmission a little bit. Tighten down the crossmember bolts and nuts, these go to 55 as well, and then the transmission mount nuts, which only go to 16 foot-pounds.
If you happen to break off one of the bolts for the crossmember and you can't fix it immediately, for example, I gotta go to work today and my extractor set is still in the mail on its way here, that's totally fine. You can absolutely drive around with a crossmember held in by only 3 points as a temporary thing.
You're not even cool, bro. I did it first. But anyways, by the time I got around to fixing the bolt, after 3 years of it being broken, what I ultimately ended up doing was drilling through the factory M10 by 1.5 and tapping it to a M12 by 1.75, and it's worked great ever since. Was able to hit full torque, even now after it supports my current suspension.
I tried again to extract the broken crossmember bolt and ended up breaking an extractor in the bolt. So now there ain't no way in hell I can get it out. I'll have to cut open the frame rail. One might have recommended, instead of an extractor, to just drill the bolt out entirely and retap the threads, which is a better idea. I just personally hate retapping threads, so for now my fix is a little trick a certain someone taught me called ignore it and pretend it's not a problem. Aside from that though, the job went smoothly and was very easy. If you've never done this before, it can seem intimidating, but it's really not that bad. Not including the broken bolt situation, I'd say I had it done in less than 2 hours, taking my time. Description, links, the rest, goodbye.